Alright guys, my name is Metagoblin and today I am presenting to you the Big BWL Shopping List for Phase 3. This shopping list is relevant to every single class in the game. We'll be covering the absolute mandatory consumables you will have to bring to BWL, otherwise you will basically be really massively letting the raid down and you probably won't survive any raid fight anyway. Then we'll go through less mandatory consumables, which are basically just will help you with your progression, but they're not absolutely mandatory, but nonetheless very useful. Then we'll cover like every single consumable on a role level, so the best ones for melee DPS, caster DPS, healers and tanks, and all like extra gimmicky consumables that you can use for your role. And then we'll even go deeper than that and go to basically a class specific level of consumables, and then we'll probably finish it there. By the way guys, just before we jump in, if you want to catch any of my live streams of BWL from a rogue's perspective, please do give me a quick follow on Twitch, you'll find that in the description. So in the first section we're going to be covering consumables that absolutely everyone can use, and first section will basically be about the consumables that are absolutely mandatory for you to bring, and then secondly it will be consumables that are kind of not mandatory but will be basically provide you an extra defensive advantage and just kind of help you survive. So let's cover all of the absolutely mandatory consumables for BWL. First of all, you will need a Greater Fire Protection Potion to survive a number of fights in BWL, very similar to Molten Core. And you will also need a Greater Shadow Protection Potion, so those are two ones that I'd recommend stacking quite high, because those are the most mandatory potions that you're going to have to bring. Then limited vulnerability potions. There's a number of fights where you may basically pull aggro, especially for melee, so a limited vulnerability potion basically drops your aggro. Heavy rune cloth, a number of situations where basically you're not going to get healed because the healers are basically, you know, prioritizing healing other people, particularly the tanks, so topping your healing up with a cheeky rune cloth bandage is pretty useful. Next we have Holy Water. Holy Water is basically quite mandatory for the last fight in BWL against Nefarian, because he spawns all of these like undead adds before the fight actually starts, and you have to kind of AoE them down, so it's very useful in taking them down very effectively and quickly. And apart from that, you also will need Dense Dynamite or Crystal Charge or Sapper Charges, depending on what you can make and whether you have engineering or not, because this is basically basically an AoE damaging item, very similar to Holy Water, other than, you know, Dynamite and all that kind of thing. You will use it basically on that similar fight, but you also use it in the suppression room as well when the whelplings have fire vulnerability. And the main reason why we pick these items over other items like arcane bombs or anything like that is because they do fire damage, and you will need that for the, you know, the whelplings that basically get fire vulnerability. But anyway, next let's move on to the very useful defensive consumables that I would recommend everyone to get, but again they are not absolutely mandatory. So first of all we have the Elixir of Fortitude. Very simply adds 120 health to your character, and you can stack it with other effects like the Rumsey Rum Black Label or the Gordock Green Grog, which is basically an alcohol buff which will increase your health. Well, the Rum one increases it by 150, the Gordock Green Grog can only increase it by 10. The Rum thing you can buy basically from the auction house. It is a little bit expensive and it's obviously more useful for tanks. You may just want to go for the Gordock Green Grog after you've done a Dime or Tribute run to get the extra 100 health. Apart from this, you've also got the Lucky Rocket Cluster. I've made a video about this previously, so check that out on my channel. It basically provides a 300 health buff to your entire raid, but you got to get the engineering recipe to make the Rocket Cluster launcher and stuff like that, but nonetheless pretty useful health buff. You've also got Lung Juice Cocktail, increases your health by 250, basically from Blasted Lands quests. And apart from this, major health stones, obviously from a Warlock, major healing potions. You've also got Festival Dumplings, which is probably the best food that you can get in the game right now with a Lunar Festival, just regenerates your health and mana very, very quickly. You've got Whipper Root Tuber, which is found in Fellwood, which is basically very similar to a health potion. You've also got Crystal Restore, which is basically a healing item. You can target onto a different person and it will heal them very slowly. It's kind of useful if your healers are running out of mana and everyone can use it. And apart from that, you've also got Stat Scrolls, which you can also find very cheaply on the auction house to just squeeze a little bit of extra effectiveness out of your class, whether you're getting Agility Scroll, Intellect Scroll or a Strength Scroll. So something to bear in mind because they are ridiculously cheap on the auction house. So now let's move on to more specific consumables for each individual role or raiding role. First of all, we have for melee DPS, we have Juju Power, which can basically be acquired by farming Frost Giants in Winter Spring. You might want to look up a guide for that. You can also buy them off the auction house, where you can buy the reagent that is required for turning in the quest. The quest is basically in Winter Spring, so it's pretty easy to do. Apart from that, we've got Blessed Sunfruit, which is a plus 10 strength buff that you can very easily and very cheaply get from Argent Dawn, so there's also that option. You can also get Grilled Squid, you know, if you're a rogue and you prefer agility, because, well, to be fair, I think warriors prefer agility as well, and every melee DPS, to be honest, because you get an extra little chance to get crit as well. The only issue with Grilled Squid is probably going to be more expensive, because you can actually, like, fish it right now, because it's like a seasonal thing. Apart from this, you've got the Elixir of the Mongoose, basically the best melee elixir that you can get in the game. Free action potions are pretty essential for certain fights that basically... There's a certain mob, I can't remember the name of a certain mob, but it basically does like earthquake kind of stunning effects, which are kind of really irritating, and you can basically get one-shotted in that situation. So a fat potion is pretty useful to get out of those situations and survive. You've also got the Winterfall Firewater, which is an extra little bit of a strength buff that you can get from basically farming it in Winter Spring. You've also got Roids and Ground Scorpock Assay, whatever that word is, which is basically again the Blasted Lands daily quests that you can do to basically get an extra buff and then log out your character for when you're raiding. So that's pretty much everything for melee DPS. So let's move on to caster DPS consumables. We have the Greater Arcane Elixir, which very simply increases your spell power. Major mana potions for basically regenerating your mana, pretty obvious. You've also got Dark Runes and Demonic Runes, which again are very useful for regenerating your mana, and you probably want to basically use it when you've got like a major healing potion or a health stone or something like that, so obviously you don't end up accidentally killing yourself. You've got Run Tum Tuber Surprise, which is basically the best food item that you can get for caster DPSs. You've got the Cerebral Cortex Compound and the let's just talk about the Cerebral Cortex Compound. That's basically an intellect buff that you get from the Blasted Lands quests. And you've also got Crystal Restore, which I talked about previously. It's basically a healing item. Next, let's move on to healers. So the first food item that we have is the Sage Fish Delight or Night Fin Soup, which basically provides you with an extra MP5 effect. You've got major mana potions again, the Dark Runes and Demonic Runes, the Cerebral Cortex Compound for the intellect buff. You've also got Night Dragon's Breath, which is pretty useful for caster DPS as well. Actually, it's basically like an extra mana potion that you can get from Felwood, very similar to the other plant item that increases your health, restores your health. We've also got Mage Blood Potion, which is basically an MP5 effect if your if your class prefers that kind of effect. You've got Elixir or Greater Intellect. You've got Juju Guile, Gizzard Gum, and Crystal Restore. Obviously, some of these buffs will increase your spirit. Some of them will increase your MP5. If you're a class that doesn't actually benefit from spirit, you don't want to go for the spirit buffs. Like, for instance, if you're playing Shaman, you're better off just going for the MP5 effects. And obviously the Crystal Restore, again, it's basically a quick healing item that you can use. Just put it on the tank if you're totally running out of mana. I think it's a good clutch, basically a really useful clutch item. Now let's finish off talking about tanks before we start talking about class specific consumables. First of all, we have the Major Healing Potion. Then we have Scroll of Protection, which is basically the best in slot scroll that increases your armor slightly, which is actually really useful for tanks. You've got the Elixir of the Mongoose. Again, just increases your agility, which obviously increases your armor. Blessed Sunfruit or the Monster Amulet. Basically, the Blessed Sunfruit will increase your strength if you want to prioritize strength, and that basically increase block damage reduction, or you want to prioritize stamina. It's up to you. You've got the Greater Stone Shield Potion, a little bit pricey, but it will increase your armor by a significant amount. You've got Gift of Arthas, which essentially reduces the melee damage, increases the melee damage that the boss takes, so it's basically a buff that you use to increase the melee DPS of everyone else in the raid. You've got Scroll of Agility and Scroll of Strength if you want to use them. Dense Sharpening Stones or Elemental Sharpening Stones, whichever you want to use to basically increase your... Probably more likely those items are going to be great for increasing your threat generation. Roids, Ground Scorpock Assay, we talked about those previously. Again, they're more like DPS increasing consumables that are going to be good for generating more threat. You've got Crystal Ward. This is basically an extra cheeky armor buff that you can get for Ungoro Crater. Basically, whenever I've talked about some kind of crystal item, Crystal Restore, Crystal Ward, it's basically get them from quests in Ungoro Crater, so it is something to look up. And then we've also got Juju Escape, which very simply increases your dodge chance. And you also have a really kind of wildcard item, which is actually really useful, called the Unconscious Dig Rat. So this is an item that when you use it, it will basically, I've not actually seen it myself, but apparently what it does is it creates like a target for you to basically kill, but you don't want to kill it. What you want to do is essentially use Intimidating Shout and basically to get yourself in combat with this mob, and then start using Blood Rage to stack up about 100, well, you can stack up to 100 rage before the boss fight is started, and then when you jump into the boss fight you have full rage, which means you just be able to generate aggro very quickly, and you know, there's less chance of other people pulling aggro off you. Probably going to be very useful for Nixier's Lair as well. So yeah, and this obviously, that one's also very useful for just melee DPS as well. Well, not obviously rogues or anything, just primarily warriors or feral druids or anything like that. But anyway, let's basically finish off talking about class-specific consumables. So first of all, we have the rogue. You want to stack Thistle Tea, instant poison, and you also want a pet. This is pretty important actually. You want basically a pet, preferably a flying pet, with a totally, well, you want, basically in a suppression room you have to go around disarming the suppression room, and you basically summon a pet so that everyone else in the group can see your location, where even though that you are stealth. So what basically all the rogues, what we're gonna have to do is each individually get certain pets which are different to each other, preferably flying ones, and preferably kind of like brightly coloured ones which aren't red, you know, ones that you can see very clearly, you know, however you want to do that. But yeah, that's basically why rogues need a pet, and it's mainly for the suppression room. Anyway, let's start talking about warriors. Warriors, you want to get dense sharpening stones or elemental sharpening stones if you have the money to do it, to increase your crit chance. For hunters, you can also get elemental sharpening stones on both your dual wielding weapons to get like 4% crit chance, which is absolutely ridiculous. Apart from that, you also want the thorium lead arrows, and if you can, stack some doom shots as well that you can get, pretty sure, from the first boss in Lower Blackrock Spire, the Shadow Hunter dude. Apart from that, for warriors, don't know why I have warriors here twice, but Mighty Rage Potion is another really great potion that warriors can get, which again it's great for increasing DPS or increasing threat generation for tanks. And the last one, mages, obviously make your mana gems, and don't forget to make your mana gems. That's pretty much all the consumables that I can think of. There's so many consumables in Classic WoW, I'm probably missed like one or two still, even though I don't know how many I've included in this list, but it must be way over 20 to 30 different consumables that you can use for raiding, which, you know, is a lot more than what you can get on retail. Anyway, my name is the Metagoblin. To my next video, ciao.